This is my love letter to the classic can and the classic bottle cozy, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, but a video is worth... Hey everyone, my name is Natalie, also known as Nitty Natty, and today I'm here talking to you about two patterns. This is the classic can cozy, and this is the classic bottle cozy. You can get both patterns linked down below in my Ravelry store, Etsy shop, or on my website. I have one more thing I want to tell you before I dive into the inspiration behind this pattern. In this video, somewhere, you are going to find a discount code for the pattern on Ravelry. Now, this code is only good for 2 weeks after this video goes up, so December 13th of 2019 and 2 weeks past that, but that's it. Now, the code, it's supposed to be a fun thing. If you watch through the video, usually around the middle, you'll see a random word appear on the bottom of the screen. The word will also have the word 30 behind it to get 30% off the pattern. If you watch this video through and you're like, I can't find the code anywhere, no trouble, message me, my information is down below, or you can join the Love and Stitches Ravelry group where all the group members get a discount code for my new patterns every single time they release. So just wanted to disclaimer that before we get started. Now let's move over to the inspiration. I think I'm gonna open up this Sprite here to get us going. Cheers. So, the inspiration behind these cozies. So it all started, oh, it's so nice and cold. It all started with the classic bottle cozy. This pattern first came out, I think, in September of 2018, so over a year ago. And maybe it wasn't September, but it was definitely fall of 2018. And this just came from a desire to make something that was small and use scraps, but was like a good little cozy pattern. It was part of a collection called Fall Means Football, which has different loosely football or sports themed patterns. There's a hat, there's some socks, and then this one was also included. So the real thought behind the process was to use two colors, so no matter what your team was, or if you're just using favorite colors, you could stripe this pattern. So I have seen people make the classic bottle cozy like I did, kind of just in fun leftover scraps, or they've made a set of them for their boyfriend or husband or brother or girlfriend or friend in sports teams colors that they like. So I have another set to show you here in a second, but that's kind of where the inspiration came behind making something that was loosely related to sports but still fun, and that's where the bottle cozy came from. Now, I immediately wanted to make a can cozy as well, but hey, it's been a year and now it's finally happening. So from the bottle cozy, we got the sister pattern, the classic can cozy, which is the one that's releasing this year in 2019. So you can see they're very similar designs with the same kind of striping, the same kind of ribbing, and they both have the start where you have like kind of a built-in coaster, but I'll talk more about that later. I'm not gonna tilt this one since I totally opened it, but that's really the inspiration behind those patterns. Something cute, something fun, great for gifts, and great for sports fans. So I'm still drinking Sprite. Let's talk about the journey. So the journey to make this pattern has been sort of a long one since it started in 2018 and now it's 2019. So this journey through this pattern was one of my first patterns when I did the bottle cozy. Let me show you another one so you don't have to keep looking at the same purple one. Let me get it on here. Here's a hot tip for you. These bottle cozies, they're a little tight on the top so that they do hug the slim neck of a bottle. So before you open your bottle, it's best to go ahead and put that cozy on. The can cozies are not as tight. That's just the nature of a can, but there's a tip for you. Slide that on there before you open it up. That will help a whole lot. So here's another one. So the journey here, I hardly remember when I first designed it, but it was one of my first patterns. So I know that I did struggle a little bit along the way. I started with the concept of starting at the bottom, kind of like a hat or anything, and doing increases to get this flat bottom. From there, I did a lot of trying on the bottle and making sure it fit, and then working through the striping, the measurement, how it would stretch when you hold on to it. Different bottles are shaped different ways, and then I went through some different edgings. At first, I didn't want to do anything complicated with the top of the cozy because I wanted this to be a really easy pattern for people. But as I was working it, I kind of was thinking it needs to look finished. Like, I want this to be not just classic, but like classy, so that it looks good, it looks finished, and it's different from some of the other cozy patterns that I had seen out there. So that's why it has this nice finished I-cord edging. There's a little bit something special about it that makes it stretchy, but again, I'll talk about that more when I get to some video tutorials for this pattern. So once I had the concept worked up, I worked a few of them and sent it out to testers, and things actually went pretty smoothly. What's funny is, a year later, I sent out testers for the can cozy, and I decided I would retest my bottle cozy because I wanted to reformat the pattern. My patterns look different now than they did in 2018. I think they're a lot clearer and a lot better. The pattern itself didn't change, but the format did. What is so funny is I had some issues with the bottle cozy after that. Not with the pattern, but more of the way that it fit. And I thought that was so interesting that a year later, you can test a pattern. It hasn't changed, and yet a new group of testers, more perspective. I've grown as a designer, things have changed, and I get more feedback. It's really, really great. But I thought that was super interesting. And then the can cozy just got tested this year. It is a similar construction to the bottle cozy where it starts at the bottom. Again, I can grab one that is not open so that you can actually see. It starts at the bottom here. Join in the round, do some increasing, do some ribbing, do some stripes. And again, you do this nice I-cord bind off edge. So this one had to go through a couple stages. This was the first one. As you can see, it's a lot taller. I mean, a lot is a loose term. It's a small object, so it's a bit taller by like ½ inch or so. And I realized when I tried to use this cozy that ½ inch meant that you were getting a little bit of yarn in your mouth. So I knew I had to adjust, and that's when I came to this height, which is more what you're gonna see in like the classic foam cozies. So that worked out perfect. Plus, you're gonna get a little bit of stretch with the can cozy. The bottle cozy doesn't have as much stretch to it. It also depends on the kind of yarn you use, but because bottles have a label, it's a little more grippy and it's not gonna stretch as much, whereas cans are so slick that as you're holding, you get, just a little bit of stretch. Now, of course, you can adjust it. You can kind of rest your hand on the bottom. I mean, that's probably mostly how you hold a can anyway. You're not like holding it like this and letting it stretch. But just so you know, that's part of the charm of the classic can cozy. Now, that's really it for the journey. So let's move right along into what I love about the classic can and bottle cozies, and of course, how to use them. How to use the classic can cozy. Okay, totally kidding, of course. You obviously know how to use a cozy. But I'm gonna reshare that tip that I should have shared here. When you're using the classic bottle cozy, pro tip, put the cozy on before you open the bottle. Reason being is this opening is real snug on the bottle cozy. It's a bit stretchy, but it's not the same stretch as you have down here. They do go on from the bottom up. You're not gonna fit through this hole in the bottom. It's not intended to be that way. So go ahead, maybe I'll stand up for you. Make sure I just kind of like tilt it towards me. I get the whole thing stretched around the bottom here, and then just kind of slide it on almost like a sock. And there you go. Now you can actually open up your soda or your drink of choice, and you're all good. I really, really love the Classic Bottle Cozy. I think it looks so nice and clean. I worked really hard on getting these decreases and this finishing to look nice on a can and not, on a bottle, and not just end right here. The other thing that I really like about it is having this built-in coaster, and again, you have that on both. So when you set your drink down, not only are you not having to worry as much about that glass like hitting the table, but you also don't have to worry as much about sweat because you have that little built-in coaster here. Now, the Can Cozy is very similar. It's got the built-in coaster, but again, like I just mentioned, I keep getting ahead of myself. It does have some stretch. When you're picking yarn out for the Classic Can Cozy, you might want to go with something that is not as synthetic. This one here, these are opposites. These are made for Cowboys fans, and this one is a lot stretchier than this one because I swapped the yarns. This blue base here, I think, is an 85-15. It's more wool and less synthetic, so it doesn't have as much stretch and slink to it. Whereas the gray is a 75-25 sock yarn, so it's got a lot more stretch. I mean, you can see the difference in me holding them right here. Now, I would totally suggest you use scraps, so whatever you have in fingering weight, just use it, but just know you're gonna have a little more stretch with those sock yarns than you are with something that has a little more wool in it. Okay, I think that's all about what I love about it and how to use it. So let's move into those nitty-gritty details that I know you are ready to hear. All right, let's get into those details. To knit either the Classic Bottle or the Classic Can Cozy, you're going to need fingering weight yarn, so also known as sock weight. Anything you have left over is going to be perfect because you do not need very much yarn for these cozies. They barely take any at all. So my test knitters are so awesome. I had them record how much yarn that they actually used in the Classic Can and the Classic Bottle Cozy, and I have the results right in front of me on my trusty computer. So I am going to most of the time overlist how much yarn you need because I don't want you to run out, but I'm going to tell you the truth right here. If you want to use your tiniest scraps, this is what you need to know. For the Classic Can Cozy, it is smaller, but it is also fatter than the Bottle Cozy. However, you need less yarn. For the main color here, the most yarn that any of my testers used was 8 grams. Now in the pattern, am I going to put 10 or 15? Of course, because I don't want you to run out, but the most anyone used was 8 grams. For the contrast color, the most anyone used was 4 grams. Am I going to put 5? Am I going to put 10? Probably, but you really don't need a lot for that striping. So 8 and 4 or 10 and 5 have a little extra so you have something to weave in. Now the Bottle Cozy is taller, although it is skinnier, but it does take more yarn. So the most that anyone used for the main color was 15 grams. I'm definitely going to list 20 on that pattern. I think that's what it's at right now. But only one person did use 15. Most everyone else was under 12 grams. So if you are not a tight knitter, because you know, if you knit tight, more stitches, more yarn, then you're probably going to be okay. I would say you're safe with 13. For the contrast color, the most anyone used, actually every single person only used 3 grams. Again, these stripes don't take much and this is skinnier, so make sure you have 5 and you'll be good to go. Now, as far as needles, I am recommending a US 1 2.25. That's what I had to use, but you might need to actually go up or down depending on your gauge. This is a pattern that's knit similar to like a sock gauge, 8 stitches per inch or 32 stitches over 4. So if you are a sock knitter, you might want to start with your typical sock needle and change from there. Do I think you need to make a gauge swatch? Not really. Maybe you can just knit one cozy and see if it works and adjust as needed. Now, something that I should have talked about and something that I love about this pattern is from my test knitters last year and the ones this year, I've gathered that it's important to give lots and lots of different ways for you to try, like basically in a pattern, you're trying to match what I have done. And so in order for you to to fit this, you need to know a few different things. You need to know how many inches that I have knit to, and that's in the pattern. But for some of you, you just want to know how many rows. You're like, just tell me. So I've also gathered data from my test knitters, and they have told me how many rows it's taking them to hit those inch markers. So you have those inch and half-inch markers as a like, this is definitely where it needs to be, but you also have the rows to know when you're getting close. The other thing that I've learned is some people use row gauge and some people don't. So that is something that I am interested in adding into the pattern so that you can just hit the gauge and go by the rows. So do I think you need to knit a gauge swatch? It's a small project. Maybe the first one is your gauge. Up to you. There are no difficult stitches in this. You will need to know how to increase. What increase did I use? Knit front and back. So you'll need to know how to do knit front and back, I think. I promise this is my pattern. Knit front and back. Of course, knits and purls for the ribbing. A little bit of decreasing, and then this I-cord bind off. But don't worry, I actually have a video for you, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. So there's 2 videos that help support this pattern. One is specifically this I-cord bind off. It's a stretchy I-cord bind off, and I-cord is already pretty stretchy. What this is you do an extra yarn over in there, and it really gives more. It's stretchy, but it also gives structure and consistency to your I-cord bind off. So that is a video that is public on YouTube. You can go to it right now, but it is meant to supplement this pattern. The other one I have that I love, not just for this, but for everything, is knitting over your ends. So as you're knitting this pattern, you can join in a new color and knit over your ends, and only have to weave in like a couple ends up here and the one that you start with. That is also public on my YouTube channel. You can go watch it now, use it for other patterns, but it's really, really great for this one. So those are some of the things and areas you can use to get some video help as you're making this pattern. Now, if you are a new knitter, or maybe you've been knitting for a while, but you want to try socks, I think that this is a good step before you move into a sock. Because it's the same weight as socks, you're using the same needle size, the same kind of yarn, but it's not as big as a sock, and it doesn't have as many new techniques. This is a great way to kind of get your feet wet with the tiny yarn and the tiny needles and small circumference knitting, and see if you like it before you dive into a pair of socks. But when you're ready to knit some socks, I've also got tutorials on those, and I will try to remember to link them down below. But if not, you can find the toe up and cuff down sock series in the tutorials section of my YouTube channel. All right, that is everything. I am signing off my love letter to the Classic Can and the Classic Bottle Cozy. Love and stitches, Knitty Natty.